I'm the owner of Langley U-Blast. Just recently acquired it from the guys that started it back in 2003. My wife, Leah, was supposed to be here tonight and sends her regrets, but she couldn't make it. I brought my number one guy, Peter, to be with me tonight to give me some help.
Nice to meet you.
I will keep my comments and remarks brief so that you guys have more time in the cabinet. I think some of you saw me when I came out to the school out in Abbotsford anyways. So at the risk of rehashing things, we're going to try a couple of different medias tonight in the sandblasting shop. There's a couple of different things that we can do with media blasting and wood. One of the things that you can do, of course, is to actually carve wood. So you can put a masking material over top of it and you can actually carve away the wood underneath to create a shape or to actually create some weathering effect on it. There's all sorts of samples of wood in the shop where we've done that with. You can also just take something like this table leg that Gary brought and use, use a fairly soft media to remove some of the color from the wood if you were planning on restaining it perhaps or refinishing it. We get a lot of folks that actually bring covered doors and drawer fronts of various kinds. Honey oak doesn't seem to be popular anymore, and everybody wants dark colored cabinet doors, so they'll bring them into the shop and we can actually use a soda media to get some of the color out at least and get it opened up so that they can apply a darker stain to it. Well, that's a great question. It depends on the media and it depends on the wood, but yes, it will raise the grain. Sometimes that's desirable, sometimes it isn't. So obviously when you come into the shop, one of the things we're going to do when we talk to you is find out exactly what you're doing and what your end result might be, and then we can apply the various different medias that we have and the machines to try and come as close to the result as we can. General rule of thumb, when you apply an abrasive media to wood, it raises the grain, especially when it's air-driven. So what I've done is I've actually set up 4 of our 5 machines tonight. Each one of them has a different media in it. This is crushed glass, and there's actually a sample of it up here, in the raw, so to speak. You can have a look at that. It's basically a non-silica glass that's been smashed up into a fine dust. It actually works great at removing top coats from wood, but it can also raise the grain if you wish. That one is walnut. Walnut is really good for taking painted wood and knocking paint off and actually taking some of the wood with it to create a weathered effect if you wish. We've had a few guys that have taken really old window frames and window panes out of heritage homes and hit it with walnut because it actually takes some of the old dried up putty out of there, it takes some of the paint off, and where the wood hasn't failed completely, it actually creates a bit of a weathered effect as well. So it's kind of an interesting product. The one directly behind you has got soda in it. That is sodium bicarbonate. It's exactly the same stuff that you would use for baking. What happens with this stuff, though, is that it's compressed into tiny little balls that are pressed in there, and so it feels a little bit like salt, like table salt. And the nice thing about that stuff is it's highly friable. In other words, it smashes up really easily when it hits. So it basically takes the top layer off. There's a bit of a mechanical energy that's exerted on the wood, but it's not so hard that it removes a lot of wood. But of course, it depends on the species. I mean, some wood, like hardwoods, any of the South Asian teaks or hardwoods, that kind of stuff, it resists really well. But if you were to put it onto a birch, then it would eat up the birch pretty quickly. So. And then finally, on the corner there, we've got garnet loaded up, and the garnet is just an industrial abrasive. It's made exactly out of the gemstone or semi-precious gem garnet. This stuff is alluvial. It's actually harvested off the beach in the Indian Ocean. For whatever reason, that alluvial action creates a fantastic little crystal that's really sharp, and it does a great job of cleaning metal, which is what we use it for primarily, but it also does a great job of weathering wood. And we've had a couple of contractors come in with great big milled beams that they want to look weathered. So it'll come straight out of the mill, into the cabinet, hit it with the garnet, and all of a sudden it looks like they just found it on the beach. So it's quite an interesting process. Just a little bit of background. This is actually the blasting gun. I can pass that around. In the bottom, there's 2 nozzles on that thing. The bottom nozzle is attached for the media, and this piece on the back is where the compressed air goes. So the compressed air blows through a chamber and creates a venturi or suction, and then the media is drawn through the gun and it's blended right where this little brass middle handle is, and it's expelled out the So this machine, or these machines are capable of about 25 cubic feet per minute, 25 to 30, something like that, at 110 to 115 psi. So if you do the math, and I didn't, I just cheated and looked it up, the media is coming out the front at about 800 kilometers an hour, an inch away. So it's moving, and there's a lot of energy involved in that, obviously. And it's sort of like a garden hose. The further back you are, the less energy there is. And so if you're really up close, it's just like when you're a little kid watering mom's plants and suddenly discovered that the hose does really interesting things to the dirt. Same thing happens with a sandblasting gun. So you can actually really carve, especially with wood. The closer you are, the more energy you exert on the wood. The other thing that we also talk about with those guns is that you keep it at a bit of an angle when you're blasting. So we basically, we tell people to think chisel instead of hammer, so that when you're close up like that, there's quite a strong pillar of air that's pushing that media out. And so what you want to be able to do is to have that air redeflect somewhere else. If you hold it really close and it's straight on, it creates a cushion. And then the media comes out and hits the air coming back, and you don't get a whole lot going on.
What do you use for tips to stop the media from wearing off?
These tips are made out of a material called boron carbide. It's really hard, but it's brittle like glass. So it looks a little bit like carbon. They resist the abrasive media. We can usually get about a month and a half to 2 months out of a single nozzle in general use here, and these machines are going just about all the time, compared to about a week for like a ceramic nozzle. When the previous owners first started buying those nozzles, they were $225 a piece. So, and you go through quite a few of them. So we have managed over the years, and I'll give all the credit to the previous owners, have gotten the price down quite a bit because of the volume that we buy. So they're not quite as painful to buy now, but you still wear, they go through them pretty quickly. These guns, the same thing. I mean, first thing in sandblasting or medium blasting is everything wears out. So eventually you're going to be replacing all your stuff. These cabinets are made in Canada by a company that's based in Edmonton, Modublast, but they have a local reseller in Coquitlam. So the nice thing about these things is that even though they do wear out, we can get spare parts really quickly. And and they're completely modular, which is the mod part of Modublast. So everything comes apart and you can replace anything you need to, which is really nice.
Do they have adjustable tips on them all, or just one setting?
There's actually quite a bit of adjustments in these things. There's air pressure adjustments, of course. There's also there's an air blast valve inside the gun that you can adjust that creates a different amount of suction. You can get these nozzles with different apertures. I think this one's 5/16, but you can get them down to about 1/4 of an inch, and you can get them larger as well. These cabinets, the larger the opening, the more air that flows through it. So these cabinets work best with a 1/4 or 5/16 nozzle. But you can adjust the air pressure at the cabinet. You can adjust the venturi here, and you can also adjust the size of the nozzle. So yeah, there's lots of adjustability. And of course, it's near fault. That's the easiest one. So I'll talk about one more thing really quickly, because I already know that there's going to be a few questions about this. Masking. A lot of the times when you're doing wood, especially if you're cleaning it, like if a guy brings in a whole pile of cabinet door fronts, we don't need to worry about masking, obviously. This kind of thing was actually done with a commercial masking material called Resist. Unfortunately, I don't have an awful lot of it, and it does require a little bit of setup to get on there, but it's kind of a thick, rubbery, adhesive-backed material. You just pass it on. And it is available commercially, but it does require a little bit of skill in that you have to basically cut it out to make it look like whatever it is that you're going to blast onto your piece of wood. And I have no artistic skill at all, so I'm happy to sell it to you, but I can't really do much.
Sticky back?
It's got a sticky back on it, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you go to the 3M website and spend the day and a half that it takes to get through all the products that they offer, there's a ton of those different kinds of resist materials for all sorts of applications, wood and plastic and glass and metal, and on it goes, right? Different thicknesses, different adhesive strengths. Most of this stuff, we have one guy out in Mission that comes in and does stone blasting, and he has his on a great big kind of laser plotter type cutter so that he can create specific masks for the kinds of things that he wants to do. Failing that, if you just need to do a quick little cover-up, you can use masking tape. like we were saying before, masking tape requires a little bit of time for the glue to set up. If you come in and put a piece of masking tape on a piece of wood and then put it into the cabinet, within 10 seconds the masking tape's all blown off because the glue hasn't really had a chance to set. So mask it before you come. Give it a little bit of time for the glue to set up, and that's usually the best process. It works really well, but also even duct tape works pretty good. But the downside of that, of course, is that you're going to contaminate the wood with the glue that's on this stuff. So it's kind of a trade-off.
You don't blow holes through it.
This stuff surprisingly doesn't. Paper tape, a layer or two of paper tape, you'll blow a hole in it, almost as soon as you start blasting. It kind of depends on how it's applied and what you're using it for. I mean, you could wrap up a bolt head with 3 or 4 layers of that, and you can blast it for 10 or 15 seconds before you wear through the tape, so that's not so bad. But this stuff, you won't at all. So, okay, enough about me talking. What I'll do is give you just a quick